The one to watch tonight.
Well,
it went like a dream. Danny excelled himself.
Hustle, next on BBC1.
The detective inspector, his anorak, his kite and his eggs.
hi.
It's a team thing. A new detective series starring Alistair McGowan, Mayo, Sunday at 8 on BBC1.
Mountains are home to some remarkable animals that live where mankind struggles to survive. Planet Earth, as you've never seen it before. Sunday at 9 on BBC1.
One to watch tonight.
Wales, imploding. Italy, improving. Ireland, unsung. Scotland, incredible. France, unpredictable. England, off colour. The Six Nations wide open.
Wales v Italy, Ireland v Scotland, France v England. Live this weekend on BBC1 and Radio 5 Live.
Oh, matron.
Hail Caesar.
Oh, Kenny, not again. Put it away.
Kenneth Williams, Fantabulosa, Monday at 9 on BBC4.
Again. Back once again. Back once again. Like the phoenix coming back. Don't you come back.
Johnny Vegas is back as Moz. Ideal, Tuesday at 10:30 on BBC3.
This is BBC1 in the South. Now the 10 o'clock. Roger Finn.
Drought across East Africa puts 11 million people at risk of starvation. In Somalia, little aid is getting through as warlords battle for control of the country.
These people living in this war-ravaged land have faced hardships that are almost impossible to imagine. And now they are confronted with the threat of starvation.
We'll be assessing the scale of the disaster across the region as the UN calls for the world to act now. Also tonight, his name symbolised one of the 60s greatest scandals. John Profumo has died. The death of a soldier at Deep Cut, a coroner backs calls for a public inquiry. And a mother loses her 3 children and her partner in a massive house fire.
In the south, an Isle of Wight car ferry smashes into the dock at Southampton. 9 people are hurt. An investigation has begun. And what future for hundreds of staff after the King Edward VII Hospital closure?
Good evening. There's new evidence of a human catastrophe unfolding in the east of Africa. Millions of people are at risk of starvation because the rains have failed over the past year and little is expected in the next few months. Somalia, one of the world's poorest countries, is among the worst affected. After months of drought, 2 million people are thought to be facing famine. The relief effort is threatened by rival warlords who control the country. Thousands of people have gathered at Shebella in search of food and water. Adam Minot travelled there with the Red Cross. He's the first television journalist to reach the area.
Word has got out that the Red Cross is making a food drop. We found a group who'd pitched camp on a patch of dusty, barren earth. No one knows how many in southern Somalia face the horror of imminent starvation. This is a country ripped apart by 15 years of civil war. Some of these women have walked, many carrying babies, for more than 10 days to get here.
There's no market, whatever, they left it here. So they are now empty here. They came from as far as Bay region to Lower Shebelle.
And if you weren't bringing food into them, what would happen to these people?
They will die in the next 2 months here.
Somalia is one of the most dangerous places on the planet, ruled by the gun and the bullet of rival warlords. Aid agencies can only operate under the license of gunmen. These families have lost all their animals. Their only hope of survival now, food handouts. The Red Cross is one of the few aid agencies operating in Somalia. They're taking grain that they're buying locally into the worst affected areas. But they admit it's just a drop in the ocean. Khadija Mohammed has 3 children, and for the past week she has had nothing at all to feed them. I have lost all my animals, she told me. There was no pasture for my cattle to eat, and they're all dead. I have nothing left. Miles from home in hostile lands, Khadija and her people are putting up temporary shelters without any security, without the means of looking after themselves, and without hope.
The crisis confronting Somalia is deepening every day. These people living in this war-ravaged land have faced hardships that are almost impossible to imagine. And now they are confronted with the threat of starvation.
The water is drying up fast. Villagers flock from miles around to where there is water, at the few remaining boreholes dotted across the country. New rain should come in the next few weeks, but weather experts are forecasting that it will be shorter and less heavy than usual, threatening to plunge the region deeper into the cycle of hunger and desperation. Adam Minot, BBC News, Shabelle in Somalia.
The drought is affecting not just Somalia. A vast area of East Africa covering 5 countries is facing disaster. More than 11 million people across the region are at risk of starvation, and the United Nations has warned of a humanitarian catastrophe unless the world acts now. Adam Minot is now back in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, and he joins us from there. Adam, is it just the drought that's responsible for all this, or is it political mismanagement as well?
Well, certainly if it had rained adequately in the past year, average rainfall, we would not be facing this crisis that we are at the moment. But for the past 10 years, there hasn't been enough rainfall in this area. And last year, with the failure of those 2 sets of seasonal rains, that's what precipitated this crisis. But on top of that, there are institutional problems. There's no government in Somalia, so when this crisis hit, it's obviously hit particularly severely there. Here in Kenya, we're in the really ridiculous situation that on one side of the country, in the west, there's more than enough food, while on the other side, in the northeast, people are actually starving to death. So there are severe institutional problems which do need to be sorted out. But sure, if there was enough rain, and if it rains soon, as has been forecast, this problem's not going to disappear immediately, but it will start to get better.
Now, the UN is saying the world has to act now. Is enough being done to help?
Frankly, no, not enough is being done. The United Nations World Food Programme, they've pressed the alarm button. They said six weeks ago that there was a crisis looming. The aid agencies, some have been saying since November, when those rains failed, that a crisis was on its way. And let me give you an illustration. I mean, here in Kenya, the United Nations put out an appeal for about £130 million of food aid. They've received just 20 million, so that's a £110 million shortfall. The whole region is stepping now into a crisis, and aid agencies and the United Nations, other international bodies say unless action is taken very, very soon, people are going to die in large numbers.
Okay, Adam, thanks very much. John Profumo, the minister at the heart of one of Britain's most notorious political scandals, has died, aged 91. He was forced to resign in 1963 after lying about his relationship with the prostitute Christine Keeler. She was involved with a Russian intelligence officer at the same time. The scandal helped bring about the downfall of Harold Macmillan's government. Carolyn Quinn looks back at John Profumo's life.
A soldier with a distinguished war record, John Profumo was the quintessential Conservative. Well-bred, well-married and with 12 years as a minister under his belt before becoming Secretary of State for War in 1960. His dream job wasn't to last. The Profumo affair had everything: sex, espionage and politics. Into his life came Christine Keeler, a society call girl. Apart from the moral questions, there was a potential security risk because of her involvement with a Russian naval attaché, Eugene Ivanov. As the 60s started, their lives became entangled. Clifton in Berkshire, country home of Lord Astor. It was here in 1961 at one of his extravagant parties that John Profumo first set eyes on Christine Keeler. She says that they flirted together around this pool. The affair only lasted a couple of weeks. He ended it, but news of the relationship quickly reached Westminster. The Cold War was at its coldest, suspicion of Russia at its highest. In 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis heralded a real nuclear threat. The gossip about Christine Keeler continued. Profumo made the mistake of initially denying the affair.